technical issues. I hope we've still got everybody still there. I will start from scratch, because I don't think anybody heard the first 5 slides. My name's Angus Pettit from JBA Consulting, and this is a very short summary presentation regarding the research project for the Scottish Government assessing the benefits of property level protection. Unfortunately, Debbie Garth, who's the project manager for the Scottish Government for this project, wasn't able to attend. However, so I just want to go through, give you a really sort of brief introduction project. I'm summarising 3 fairly large reports into a 20-minute presentation. So this is very much just a taster, and the reports will soon be made available. I believe that some people may have already received the blueprint document already, and will no doubt be working their way through that. However, there is a lot more to the research other than the blueprint, and I'll just go through that today. It's worth just highlighting that recent floods, there are very large social and economic consequences to communities at risk of flooding. This is August in Dallas, in the Lossie catchment that was flooded in. And the photo on the left here just highlights the disruption that flooding causes to properties, and the amount of time that people can be out of their homes for. Whilst flood risk management in Scotland has improved and altered over the last 10 to 15 years, so too has property level protection products, going from typical response in terms of sandbags, through door guards, and sort of automatic measures such as these sort of flood doors over on the right, but obviously having aesthetic aspects that improve the look and feel of property level protection. There has been a reliance historically on sandbags, which the Scottish Government wants to move away from. Sandbags are largely ineffective at flood risk. They can resource drain on the authorities in terms of delivery during floods, and homeowners do need better tools to reduce damage. The photo in the bottom left here is a really good example of what is actually preventing or limiting water ingress into the home. It's not the sandbags, it is the product on the door there. There are a number of drivers for property level protection. Going back to the PIT review, highlighted the need for resistance and resilience measures, but also you can help to achieve the sustainable objectives of the Flood Risk Management Act in Scotland. It can provide spread benefits more widely. It can benefit those properties that flood most frequently, and it benefits smaller communities that perhaps wouldn't benefit from a larger structural or engineered scheme. There's been a lot of research into resistance and resilience measures in England and Wales, some of which have shown that there are positive economic benefits to funding these schemes. So, part of the research that we were tasked with undertaking was to provide that robust evidence base for Scotland, and to look at the economic viability of PLP in Scotland. With regards to what local authorities are currently undertaking, we asked local authorities what they were planning to do in terms of property level protection. About 25% suggested they would continue the current practice. 40% said they were considering P. 20% said they had no plans or did not anticipate the need for it, and roughly 20% were awaiting policy or guidance. So there's definitely a need for further guidance and standards within Scotland to help promote property level protection. I'm sure, I hope most of you listening will be aware of what property level protection is. It is just one measure of many to deal with flood risk. And if you think about the source receptor pathway approach to flood risk mitigation, it does very much sit within that receptor area. So, PRP systems do not reduce the likelihood of flooding, but they do assist in reducing and managing the consequences of flooding. There are some key constraints, however. That there is a need for effective flood warning. which is growing all the time by developments by SEPA. And it does depend on the effective and timely actions of the owner to take action on receiving flood warnings and to install the products prior to flooding. Obviously, there are a whole suite of measures and actions associated with PRP. Going from typical flood barriers and doors and air bricks, dry proofing and sealants, and over on the right of this slide, we're really demonstrating the need for sump pumps and things like non-return valves for mitigating backing up of sewers and water into the homes from that route. We can break down, and typically PRP measures are broken down between manual and automatic approaches. We're really promoting automatic approaches because to try and get around some of the risks associated with manual measures. And we can also break down PRP into resistance and resilience. The focus of this research was very much on the resistance measures, so products that are fitted to prevent the ingress of water. However, we do accept that any particular property needing resistance and resilience is going to need a mix of different measures, and if resilience is part of that, then that would be required. But what is essential is a thorough assessment of every property to what measures are needed. Okay, just a little bit about the evidence gathering that was done as part of the project. We went out to all local authorities and residents where property level protection had been installed. What we found that was, in terms of local authorities, there have been some very innovative approaches to property level protection schemes. Over on the right, there was the sort of standard approaches, property level protection, standard products, should I say. But what we also found was that some local routes. Over on the left of this slide is the sort of container pod, which has been used by council. These are situated within communities at risk and hold synthetic bags that are essentially like sandbags, but synthetic material to place in front of flood doors and air bricks to prevent or limit water ingress. There's also the transportable flood pod, which is being used by Dumfries and Galloway in association with the fire service, and this is a sort of emergency procedure measure where this pod can be taken to a community at risk or at risk of immediate flooding, and that holds similarly flood door guards and synthetic bags. So the funding of the PRP so far, a lot of the products have been funded directly by councils, but also purchased privately as well. So there is quite a large degree of homes that have had recent flooding and purchased property protection products themselves. Assessment of what products were required, there was much bigger range, and this really highlighted that very few properties and residents have had an independent property flood risk surveyor provide. We also asked about the types of products that have been installed. In terms of the slide here, on the left is the response from the local authority, and on the right is the response from the residents. We found that local authorities generally have provided door guards, air brick covers, synthetic sandbags, so the sort of standard approaches. What we found is that very few had provided or installed non-return valves, and things like sump pumps, pumps. Whereas the residents had actually demonstrated that a much wider range of products had been included and were being used. So there's some way to go to get local authorities to install these other aspects, such as really thorough holistic appraisal and provision of necessary products for properties. We also asked about the effectiveness of PRP in terms of how effective have they been during a flood. Now, obviously, there haven't been many residents that or schemes that have actually witnessed flooding. And there was, the local authorities had suggested that 43% of deployed, prevented, or limited ingress of water. However, a rather large proportion, 43% again, indicated that no difference to water ingress was made as a result of flood protection. Now that might be because many of these schemes hadn't installed or provided the necessary other aspects such as the pumps and the monitors. So, just a quick summary. Good practice, best practice. We found that innovative approaches had been used in terms of the handover of schemes and products. Manuals and demonstrations had been done, and 75% of residents had practiced deployment of the products, which was excellent. However, the range of products applied do not cover the necessary all aspects to deal with water ingress into a home. Only 9% of surveys had been undertaken by an independent surveyor. There was no evidence of any wet tests being undertaken during installation. There was a general lack of community leads and engagement with those, lack of specific emergency plans associated with PRP, and a lack of community event dry runs, essentially. We also asked about the public perception of the benefits of PRP, and what we found is that whilst products have been bought and installed by residents to mitigate damage and reduce the impact of flooding, by far greatest impact was, or benefit was the reduced anxiety and stress associated with flooding and the threat of flooding. That's a really interesting finding that the main driver for residents to install PRP was reduced anxiety and stress. Okay, just going to go on to talk a little bit about the property analysis undertaken for this project. We assessed the flood risk to all properties in Scotland based on SEPA's latest flood maps that were released last winter. And the property data set that SEPA has developed. And we, one of the outputs of this is that we identified the total number of properties at risk in Scotland, about 113,000. They're down by different flood source, coastal, fluvial and surface water, and also local authorities. In terms of our analysis to assess the potential, those properties that would benefit from property protection, we looked at two key categories. We looked at properties flooding to a depth less than 600 mil, as that is the area where PRP is best represented. And we also looked at properties flooding most frequently. So we looked at properties flooding at the 10-year and the 25 or 30-year return periods, because mainly properties are most effective for more frequent flood events, or most cost effective. And I think I'll just go back to this slide. We've presented the results in the reports in a number of ways, and broken down the analysis into the different categories of property types and flood source. So all that information is available for local authorities to investigate further. We also, one of the tasks of the research was to look at how that property count would change over a relatively short time period. So we ran the analysis, albeit with fairly limited data in terms of climate change. We have the 30-year and the 200-year return periods mapped by SEPA. However, different approaches were required for different flood sources, and different assumptions in terms of climate change for 2035 were made between the fluvial, coastal and surface water mapping. However, this is the best available data that's readily available in Scotland. So we did run the analysis, and we found that there was actually a large increase in properties at risk for relatively small increases in flow, level, and rainfall depth. It's a summary of those results. And what this highlights potentially is that it's a fairly key finding. We don't think this analysis has been done previously in Scotland, but it suggests that the focus of flood risk management may need to shift from focusing on more extreme flood events, low return periods, more frequent events. It also suggests that the promotion of PRP and other mitigation measures that focus on more frequent flooding may have a bigger role to play in the future. I'm not going to say any more about that analysis. There is an awful lot of detail available within the reports that are coming, so digest that in your own time. Just very quickly move on to the blueprint. We've identified as part of the evidence gathering a number of risks to entry, and we've broke those down into institutional barriers, public barriers, and insurance barriers. Oops, what's happened there? Just jump to the end. Hold on. Back with this one. Okay. On this, however, it's worth saying that there are several local authorities that have implemented property level protection and have managed to get over these barriers. So part of the blueprint guidance document we've prepared does provide a process to mitigate and to overcome these barriers. This isn't in the guidance, but it does demonstrate quite well, I think, the practices required and the constraints and needed to overcome delivering a property protection scheme. There's a whole suite of factors that need to be considered and engagement required. Admittedly, you could draw the same chart for a flood protection scheme or a restoration or a natural flood management. However, it just does highlight that the engagement and the number of different factors required is high. However, we've broken it down into 4 key stages in terms of scheme implementation: appraisal, selection of products, installation of products, and then aftercare. And what we've done is fit this within the standard asset management plan do check act process. And by implementing this process, we're highlighting that implementing PRP is a cyclical process. It's not a fit or forget. You need to plan it correctly, implement it correctly, and then check that it's working, and then review over time and ensure that we continue. I've just been told I've got 10 minutes to finish this up, so I will keep going. I think we'll be fine. So, as I say, the blueprint's available and ready, and it's gone out to some stakeholders already. Success on PRP depends on many factors. Public expectations need to be managed, however, and early and ongoing engagement is installation of PRP. Links between property, flood risk, and the need for residents' involvement is essential, as is initial appraisal. As part of the initial appraisal, we are recommending an independent property survey to identify flood sources and routes into properties. In terms of limiting flooding, a holistic system is required. Although we've broken down the analysis into manual and automatic measures and resistant resilience measures, for any one property, a whole suite of different measures may be required. Go on to the next stage. So one of the other aspects was that we needed to look at test the economic viability of property protection for Scotland. The way we did that was we followed the standard Scottish Government appraisal guidance, and we assessed every property in Scotland in terms of its flood risk for a suite of return periods, and we assessed the damages avoided for 3 different lines, and then we assessed the automatic manual PLP, and we also assessed this third option, the synthetic bag protection option. We've tried to be inclusive as possible by including your typical flood damage, property damages, building fabric damages, and household inventory damages. Also things like evacuations, emergency services, losses, and intangible costs too. There was a huge amount of detail in the technical report on this, so I'll let you digest that at your own time. However, one of the byproducts of assessing all properties at risk was they were able to determine the flood damages for Scotland as a whole. We recommend that analysis indicated that there was £200 million worth of damages per year, which is lower than previous analysis. However, it does match the CECA's own internal analysis that's been undertaken. Again, we looked at the benefits of PRP, so what would be the damages avoided of implementing PRP, and again we were focusing on those properties that led to a shallow depth and flood most frequently. One of the key aspects to control this, or key aspects to account with reliability. There are a number of risks associated with PRP that needed to be taken into account. In order for PRP to be successful, you need to have flood warning. You need residents to respond to that warning. You need to install the PRP measures. You need to check or have a process of whether neighbours can be assisted. You need to review the performance during the flood and install or operate pumps if needs be, and also do follow-up checks and maintain products. Once all those risk factors are taken into account, the damage is avoided eventually, particularly for the manual approach and for synthetic sandbags. Obviously, automatic PRP measures are much more robust because they don't need as much input from residents themselves, the more passive system. In order to work out a benefit cost ratio, we also looked at the whole life costs of implementing PRP. So we looked at survey costs, administration costs, O&M costs, and aftercare costs. We also looked at, broke those costs down by 4 different property classifications and 3 different PRP approaches, manual, automatic, and synthetic. Those are the costs there, the capital and the whole life costs. This is a summary of the results in terms of the benefit cost ratio, the economic viability of PRP. And what we found was that protecting surface water, flood risk, is an issue. That may be because flood depths are much lower, therefore a higher proportion can benefit. However, surface water flood risks don't have necessarily as good a flood warning as perhaps food and coastal areas at risk. The difference high and low in these charts represents the up and low reliability factors that we decide. Because again, it's all a lot of information there and a lot of numbers within the technical report, so I suggest you look at that. However, it's just worth comparing the results of PRP with other flood risk management measures. Obviously, the best available information is on the structural, and we've just put some comparators here. Some of the information on the right-hand side of this chart has come from the Scottish Flood Defence Asset Database. But it really highlights that the cost of implementing PRP is significantly less than structural defences, notwithstanding the fact that PRP may not necessarily be the best approach in situations. And the benefit cost ratio is competitive when comparing with flood protection schemes. This is just a chart that demonstrates how many properties are protected by schemes over the last 50 years in Scotland and the costs of implementing those. So it really highlights that yes, there are a lot of schemes currently under construction. I think about 10,500 properties that will be benefiting from structural defences within the next 5 years. However, the costs, this is where the bottom right hand corner, is where we are at with PRP. And within the last 5 to 6 years, we think to 500 to 1,000 properties have benefited from property loss protection. However, we can't say that all of those are because of these problems. That's not all properties will be as to a higher standard as we would aim if following the Blue guidance. Just going to wrap up very quickly. Just to summarise then, sustainable options, PRP has been proven to be cost effective and sustainable. We have a blueprint which is ready. We need to, as a community, promote the wider uptake and awareness of property protection, both to within organisations responsible for flood risk mitigation, and there is definitely a sort of window of opportunity to the blueprint and to trial it. So I hope that is undertaken. Just the final slide, just want to say these are the reports that are available. Blueprint, the evidence summary and the technical report. They should be available on the Scotland website in the next couple of weeks, hopefully. And just to wrap up, I'd just like to thank the steering group for their input throughout the project over the last year. I think this presentation is going to end rather abruptly, so I'd just like to say thank you for your patience earlier on, and if you've got any questions you can contact myself or Debbie Garth. Mr. Long. Oh, I wasn't sure if we were just going to be knocked off or take questions. Via my email, which I don't think is on this, but it's Angus Pettit at jdaconsulting.com, or you can call me on 0131 319 2940. Ah, there's the email there. No, thank you. Oh, I could have written that down myself. Oh, they've got a question. Did you consider the use of tanking properties? No, not directly. We didn't consider that as an option. The focus was very much on resistance measures and the sort of standard property protection measures that were available. Notwithstanding the fact that in some instances things like tanking and measures that are outside the curtilage of a property may be appropriate in some instances. It's really down to a thorough assessment of the property and the type of property for any given community. Any other questions? Question here, two questions. One's from Sarah. Have demountals been used anywhere? To my knowledge, demountable barriers are being used by some local authorities in Scotland. I know that they're being used in Musselburgh, for example, by East Lothian Council. Is that Mid Lothian Council? I also know that they're being used quite a lot down on the River Severn, down in England and Wales. However, I know they're being looked at, carried out by SEPA, so I think we will start to see those being used elsewhere. The work that we've done didn't look specifically at demountable barriers. I've got a question here also. Did we? Oh, hold on, I just lost it. Bear with me. Lots of questions just coming through. Who do we contact to add new information to consider? Was it too late? We're always. I think the thing to say on that is that the research findings are being finalised now. If you do have any information, send it through to myself or Debbie Garth, and we can try and integrate it. I think the next stage will be to trial the blueprint, and that will inevitably review the processes that we've suggested. A couple other questions. In your opinion, what are the insurance implications of PRP? Should insurance companies take them into account when assessing premiums? Part of the research, we did discuss this with the research, with insurance industry. This is something it's going to come out of installing PRP. There is a need for insurance companies to take into account PRP, but how that's done is very much still to be agreed. One of the things we recommended is that a post-installation, a flood risk report, would be carried out again by an independent assessor, and that report be passed on to the insurance company to take into account PRP. So that is something that we've recommended and really needs to be trialled by local authorities. A few other questions? Hold on, let's expand this. Okay, question. However, 45% thought PRP reduces stress. If products fail, surely it is a big reputational risk for the provider. Do you think these companies are fully aware of this risk? I think the response to that is that the products themselves don't fail. The reason for failure is with regard to perhaps improper or insufficient products to deal with all routes of ingress of the property. And by following the independent survey that we're recommending and the blueprint and the evidence gathering and assessments required, that risk can be mitigated as much as possible. It's very much there's a change in process and tactics required on behalf of those installing and promoting PLP. It isn't 100% success, so there is really a need for ensuring that the public is made aware of the risks associated. And a lot of the benefit does deal with engaging the community to highlight that actions are required to mitigate failure as much as possible. Another comment relating back to insurance: will insurers reduce rates for people who adopt PRP? The hope is that they would. The reality is very different. Price comparison websites, for example, won't take into account PRP. Therefore, for any resident that needs to obtain insurance, they would need to go to a specialist broker. So, you know, and that process is very much there's a lack of education in regard to that. And there's a need for organisations like the Scottish Health Forum, for example, and local authorities to highlight this to the public, that obtaining reduced premiums as a result of PRP is a difficult process. And indeed, some insurance companies won't have systems set up to be able to enable that. So this again is provided with the blueprint, but there is a need for further education and integration between the insurance industry and ourselves. Okay, another comment there from David Miller. We have installed PRP on a property and now the insurer will not insure the property. I think my previous response hopefully will provide a bit of background as to assist you there. In response to that last question, Debbie Garth has suggested that anybody that does have problems with insurance, that they can contact Debbie Garth from the Scottish Government, and she will take those questions and queries and collate them and hopefully deal with them. Another question here. Do you think water companies have a role to play? Absolutely. We engaged with Scottish Water as part of this project, and Scottish Water have probably done a lot more than in terms of providing and testing property protection in Scotland, and they are thinking about generating their own guidance based on the research that we've done. So they are very much looking at providing a bigger role of PRP within their organisation. I think that is the end of the questions. If there are any other comments or questions that you'd like to ask me, feel free to email me